So I'm in Campbell Park and I'm with Ellie Durrant of the Parks Trust. Hello.
Hello, nice to see you.
And this is very nice here. This is actually a cricket ground with banked terraces. It's very beautiful, lots of autumnal leaves and so on. And am I right in saying the Parks Trust manages all the parks in Milton Keynes?
Pretty much, yeah. So we look after 6,000 acres green space in Milton Keynes, which is a huge amount. It keeps our team very, very busy. Campbell Park, where we are today, this is our flagship park. It's where we have our office. It's a beautiful design landscape and it's a great place for a lunchtime walk.
But there's one particular part of your parkland that we're interested in, and there's a reason we met up earlier on.
Yeah, so I am the Wetland Arc project manager, and that reflects a new project that we've just had some funding for through the National Lottery Heritage Fund. We're very excited about it. One of the things that's really special about Milton Keynes is that we have a network of linear parks that go through the city. So that 6,000 acres that I described, a lot of that is linear parks that were designed in right from the start of Milton Keynes, which is very different to lots of other cities. You know, it's part of that new town feel, new city feel that the city has. And so the Wetland Arc itself is kind of the northern band of the city, I suppose. Primarily the Ouse Valley Park, which is a really, really long, meandering piece of parkland which follows the River Great Ouse. But the Wetland Arc is more than that. So we're really lucky. We've got 3 wetland nature reserves in that area: Stony Stratford, Linford Lakes and Floodplain Forest. And those are connected up by the Great Ouse Valley Park. And we also have a few other pieces of parkland along there as well. So we've received some funding from the National Lottery Heritage Fund to basically raise awareness of the Wetland Arc itself, to understand what people already know about it, local people. You know, do they know what a wetland is? Do they know where the river is? Do they walk past it every day? And some of the things like accessibility challenges or wayfinding challenges and what wildlife lives there.
Well, I'm going to ask those questions then. So first of all, what is a wetland?
Well, wetland's kind of anything that's wet, basically. It could be a pond, it could be a lake, it could be a river, it could be a stream. And in here in Milton Keynes, a lot of it is floodplain meadows. So we've got lots and lots of parkland that's floodplain meadows next to the river.
And so the idea of a floodplain is that during the dry parts of the year, it's all fine, it's just grassland, it's grazed, presumably you've got pasture, yeah. And then in the wet times of the year, that can then take on water and stop other places flooding.
Yeah, exactly, and that was part of the design of the Parks Trust parks here in Milton Keynes. You know, the floodplains work really hard to protect people's houses from flooding. The river itself, it takes as much as it can, but when it floods, it does go over into those floodplain meadows, which kind of act as a buffer between the river and people's homes.
And one of the things you also mentioned, or you've mentioned before we had this conversation, was that you're also doing something called BioNet Gain.
Yeah, biodiversity net gain. So it's a new thing for us at the Parks Trust. So, you know, we've got 6,000 acres of land. It's huge. And we already have some incredible projects which work really hard for biodiversity. So making space for nature in our parks. So that will always come first for us. But we've realised that actually there's a market out there for us to generate some income from these interventions that we've been doing. So it's quite an exciting time to generate some income to then do better and other biodiversity projects elsewhere in the city.
And you also mentioned accessibility. So this is a parkland for nature, but, well, we're all part of nature as well, aren't we?
Yeah, 100%. So the Parks Trust works hard to balance access for people with space for nature. The Wetland Arc project is really about that. So we want to make sure that people can walk along or travel along from one end of the parkland to the other, you know, have access to the river and sort of see it up close, take part in activities, that kind of thing. But it's also about making sure that nature has space that isn't kind of touched by humans. We've got those 3 nature reserves where we do make sure that nature and biodiversity comes first. So it's basically like a symbiosis, I suppose, we're trying to achieve.
Well, that sounds brilliant. So we'll be on the Ouse Valley Way, we'll be walking almost exclusively through that wetland.
Exactly, yeah. So the Parks Trust owns a lot of land in the Wetland Arc. Not all of it, but most of it. And it is possible to go from one side to the other largely without leaving Parks Trust land. So it's really exciting.
So you also organise events for people?
Yeah, the Parks Trust does a lot of events every year. We have hundreds of events and we work with loads and loads of different community groups. Tens of thousands of people come to our events all across the city. So there's always something to get involved in: a guided walk, a workshop, larger scale events, concerts. So just take a look at our website and there's loads of information on there.
And you also have like regular walks, that kind of thing?
Yeah, we have loads of guided walks, so for all different abilities. So we have health walks, which are amazing for any ability. We've got inclusive strolls, which welcome everybody, including people with disabilities. And then we have our amazing women's walking network, and they are a little bit more serious, so they head out for miles around the parkland. So lots of things to choose from.
In order to do these things, you need money.
Yeah.
How do you do that?
Yeah, that's a really interesting thing about the Parks Trust. So unlike other kind of cities around the UK, the Parks Trust is an independent charity. So we get all of our income from property investments. So we were given an endowment when we were formed, and we've invested and grown over the years. So now we can sustain all of our 6,000 acres of parkland with the investment income from the properties that we have. So it's a really interesting and unique model.
One of the events you've got is about wetlands every year.
Yeah, so there's World Wetland Day every year in February. We don't always celebrate that, but coming up we've got Love Wetlands Day, which takes place on Love Nature Day, which is on every year.
So if you're walking through here in August, maybe you might come across that. If not, maybe you could join one of the other events that you have here. So how do we find that out?
Yeah, absolutely. There's always something about wetlands happening at the Parks Trust. So you can check out our website, which is theparkstrust.com, and there's loads of information on there.
Okay, I'll leave a link in that. Okay, thanks very much.
Great, thank you so much.